want to be on the other side next time. Well, maybe not. Wasn't too bad, eh? Let's just lay them flat right anywhere in here is fine. Just lay them down. That was better than I thought, honestly. What's up, everybody? Life's Apprentice here. Today we're going to be hanging some drywall. This is going to be a two-part video. Part one is going to be hanging the drywall. Part two is going to be finishing the drywall. If you look behind me, we have a room here we're going to be drywalling, and a closet right here that we're going to be drywalling. And you can see part of the difficulty here of this particular project is going to be getting the sheets up and in. We got a tight, steep staircase here and a tight doorway, but the sheets fit. It's not ideal, but this is the kind of stuff you run into, especially in these older houses, where in those days, I don't even know if they had 4x8 sheets, so they didn't have to worry about it. Most of it was plaster, so they didn't have to worry about getting that kind of stuff up here. So we got 30 sheets we got to get up here, and we'll get to hanging drywall here in a little bit. So we're marking our pieces here. Got a couple pieces hung. We're always going to start on the ceiling. At least that's the way I know how to do it. You're going to start on the ceiling first and then work your way down. And here we can just cut it with a razor knife and flip it over and score it. Another thing we got here, this just makes things a little bit easier. This is actually a Phillips bit for drywall, and this allows you to put your screws in at the perfect countersink just about every time. Pretty handy. Oh, we're getting some more drywall hung, and what you can see we're doing here, we have a vaulted ceiling and then there's a flat spot right here, and we're marking the studs for our last piece. You can see there we're just marking it with pencil marks because these studs are offset just a little bit, and this is just going to make it a lot easier when you get that piece up there and you're holding it. You don't have to guess where the studs are. We have another little piece we got to put in here, and then we'll mark these studs on this piece the same as we did on the other side. Well, one thing when you're remodeling you're going to have to deal with is nothing is straight. As you can see here how we're cutting this on an angle. We have up on the ceiling here, this end here is about 48 inches here, and when you get over here, we're on this stud, we're at about 46 inches. So don't get discouraged if things are crooked and out of square. That's just kind of how it is. When you're remodeling, especially, you look at some of these studs and stuff like that, how they're all offset. So when you're putting drywall on, you're gonna have to deal with some of that stuff. It's a pain in the butt, but it's part of it. This is not new construction. This is definitely remodeling. You can tell by how crooked everything is. Do as we say, not as we do. Here he is unhooking a live light. Definitely wouldn't recommend this, but it'd be really funny if you get shocked. Turn off your breakers. Don't do it the way that we do it. We're stupid. Well, you can see here we got the ceiling completely hung. Starting to work on the walls. With the walls, I like to start at the bottom and work my way up to the ceiling. You can see how crooked stuff is, and that's okay. It's just something that you got to take into consideration when you're hanging it. But sometimes you got to cut crooked on your seams like this one here, so that it actually lands on the stud, because these studs are so out of square. the other thing with the outlets and stuff like that. Just take your time, really measure these. If anything, cut them a little bit small. You might have to cut them twice, but once you cut them once and if they're too big, it's junk. You gotta
That's my leg.
You don't want to cut it quick.
I'm going to start working up towards these angles here. That's another reason I started this at the bottom and worked up, is because it gives you something to measure off of for your angles here. It's a lot easier. You don't necessarily have to start at the bottom and go up, but with these angled pieces over here, it's going to give you something to measure off of. Like you can see here, you actually have something solid and hard that you can measure off of for your height. Look at this. This is not how you hang drywall, but it's pretty funny looking. This is how one man hangs drywall. I didn't even realize he was doing this. I had to grab the camera and show you because that's funny. But we got all the room all drywalled, and we just got this little closet here to do. There's another room over here, but we're not doing that just yet. I'm not exactly sure why. But I had to get this on camera because this is funny. All right, here you can see we are pretty much done hanging. We got two more little pieces over there to hang. Everything turned out pretty good. This hole here is going to end up being a vent, which we'll cut later. But really important, make sure that your screws are countersunk in, that they're not sticking up, these heads. The next step is going to be taping and mudding. Now if you can see here, this has to get taped yet, but I like to start in the corners with my tape. This is self-adhesive tape, so you don't need to put mud underneath this tape. It's a lot easier. You're going to want to make sure that this is pushed into the corner really well. You don't want it to be rounded in the corner. And then another thing, if you can see here, where your seams meet and where they meet in the corners, you do not want to overlap your tape. You want it to be just to the edge right here. So our next step is we're going to be taping this entire room, every seam, every corner, all the way around. Okay, so this is your corner tool. We're laying our first coat here. This is the corner tool that we're going to use in the corner here. It's slightly less than 90 degrees, and there's a reason for that. And then we have just a 6-inch trowel here. I'm going to start with a smaller trowel, and as I add coats, I'm going to go up in size with my trowel in most cases. So the first thing we're going to do is I use this trowel to get mud right on the corner here. And then we're just going to smooth this in. It's a little less than 90 degrees, and there's a reason for that. It makes it a lot easier to get your mud properly feathered. I'll show you that here in a minute. But we're going to go through and fill the corner up. Don't worry about the little details quite yet. We're just going to fill this entire corner with mud. I find it easier to just put it on there with a smaller trowel. So now we have it all mudded. I'm going to spend a little bit more time and try to get this worked into the corner. Need just a little bit more. And the idea is we're going to cover up all of this tape. I find the corners, usually you can get away with just 2 coats if you do this properly. So now I'm going to get it nice and in the corner. Let's go back through a couple of times here. So that's the corner. Now what we're going to do is we're going going to take our 6-inch trowel and make sure this is a flexible trowel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it on there like this. If you can see that, I'm going to flex it like this. So what I'll do is I want to flex it this way just a little bit, and I'm going to run down the side just like this. Okay, do the same here. And I don't know if you can see this little bit of a ridge, but that's what we want. That ridge is going to be really easy to sand off. I'll have to do one more coat on this, but we're going to go all the way through and just take that and make that ridge. Now this ridge is going to be really easy to sand off right here. It's really thin. And now we'll go through, the tape's coming off here just a little bit. We're going to go through and do our seam. Now these parts of the drywall here have a little bit of a bevel in them. So if you see here, see right here there's a bevel, and that's designed to cover your tape. So you want to, when you're hanging drywall, keep that in mind, because it's going to make your life a lot easier. You want those beveled edges. We're just going to go through quick. We're not worried about details yet. We're just spreading the mud. Then we're going to go back through and scrape all that off, all the excess. The more mud you leave on there, the more you're going to have to sand. Now this is almost finished, and you won't even have to hardly touch this with a sander. This particular one here, you will not have to touch that with a sander, just very, very lightly. And then our next coat will be our finished coat. So now we just want to go through and kind of clean up around our edges. These corners here are a little bit harder. I'd recommend just leave that in there. It's really hard to get out. I can try, but it's hard to get those right into the corner really good. But that's just going to require just a little bit of sanding. We're going to clean that up. We got a little bit to add here. And again, these horizontal seams on the drywall are going to be a lot easier. These seams here are not beveled where you're vertical. Depending on which way you're running the drywall, we ran ours 8 foot horizontally. So these, I went over with a thin coat just to cover the tape, and then my second coat, I'll probably have a 10 or 12 inch trowel. This will end up being almost 20 inches wide to feather this out. I like starting with a smaller trowel on all the seams, because you want this to bump up. You want this to be higher than this. That way when you come through with your larger trowel, it's going to feather it to nothing. So that's how I do it. This is just the first coat, so you don't have to be you don't want to put it on really thick, and you don't have to be super detailed with it on your first coat. It's good. You're going to do at least 2 coats. I don't care who you are. You're going to do 2 coats on any room, sometimes 3. Usually our first coat is just going to be a light coat like this. Second coat's going to be a little bit heavier, and then our third coat is not going to be a total coverage coat. It's just going to be more or less touching up some of the rougher spots. So we're about to call it a day here. The next time you see me will most likely be tomorrow, and we'll be putting on our second coat. That's good. Okay, here you can see I started mudding. I have a 90-degree corner tool that I'm running down here, and I have an adjustable, like a 45-degree that I'm doing here. So it's all taped, and what I'll recommend, your first coat, if you can see these 3 here. My first coat, this is about a 6-inch trowel. My second coat, I'll do an 8 or a 10-inch trowel, and my third coat, I'll do about a 12-inch trowel. The reason for that is your first coat is going to be narrow, and as you go, it's going to get wider. So you don't want to try to do this all in one coat unless you're a professional. If you're doing this yourself, I've done this enough to be good at it, but I don't do drywall all the time. What I found when I was kind of learning is if you want to put really thin coats of mud on, you'll save yourself so much time sanding. So as you can see here, this is about a 6-inch piece, and that'll get lightly sanded, and then I'll go over the top of that again, and it's progressively going to get wider as we go. Stay tuned for part 2 of this video. It will be finishing drywall and sanding. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.